A strong hold over current affairs is your way to succeed in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Brace yourself and get detailed coverage of relevant news both nationally and internationally. With the monthly current affairs revision program starting from 26th October at 5 p.m. Enroll today and elevate your current affairs knowledge with comprehensive coverage of current affairs compiled through relevant sources such as the Hindu, Indian Express, Economic Times, PIB Yojana, and others. Expert support and personalized mentoring. Comprehensive assessment through MCQs and mains-oriented questions.
Hello and welcome to this edition of News Today. Without delay, let's have a look at the headlines first. All private properties cannot form part of the material resources of the community, says Supreme Court. Supreme Court upheld constitutional validity of Uttar Pradesh Board of Madarsa Education Act 2004. Finance Ministry proposes fourth phase of consolidation of regional rural banks as per reports. UN Environment Programme, World Conservation Monitoring Center and IUCN released Protected Planet Report 2024. International Solar Alliance hosts 7th session of its annual assembly in New Delhi. Asia Pacific Climate Report released by Asian Development Bank. In a significant ruling, the Supreme Court has held that private properties cannot automatically form part of the material resources of the community under Article 39B of the Constitution. The judgment came in the case of Property Owners Association versus State of Maharashtra, where the court overruled earlier judgments in State of Karnataka versus Ranganatha Reddy 1978 and Sanjeev Coke Manufacturing Company versus Bharat Coking Coal Limited 1983, which had previously allowed private properties to be considered community resources. Today, the Supreme Court clarified that the scope of material resources does not extend to all private property. The court provided key observations into how Article 39B should be interpreted. It emphasized that the concept of material resource of community must be based on the nature of the resource, its scarcity, etc. The judgment also referred to the public trust doctrine, which ensures equal access to natural resources for everyone without discrimination, reinforcing the idea that such resources should be used in the public interest. In addition, the court upheld the Keshavananda Bharati verdict of 1973, which allowed for judicial review of laws enacted under Article 31C. The court also highlighted that economic policies should not be rigid. Governments must have the flexibility to adapt their policies to the evolving needs of the economy, rather than following a fixed economic doctrine. To understand the importance of today's judgment, let's briefly look at Article 39B and Article 31C. Article 39B of the Directive Principles of State Policy directs the government to ensure that the material resources of the community are distributed to best serve public welfare. Material resources of the community may include public or private resources for producing goods or services or for producing wealth for the community. Private resources can be turned into material resources of the community by means such as nationalization, acquisition, operation of law, by purchase by state and owner's donation. Article 31C, inserted by the 25th Constitutional Amendment of 1971, protects laws aimed at implementing Article 39B and C from being challenged for violating Articles 14 and 19. The court's ruling today confirms that while laws under these articles can be protected, they are still subject to judicial scrutiny. In conclusion, the Supreme Court's ruling has clarified that not all private properties can be considered resources for public welfare, highlighting the need for careful consideration of resource types and scarcity. Moving ahead, we delve into the Supreme Court's recent decision to uphold the constitutional validity of the Uttar Pradesh Board of Madarsa Education Act 2004, widely known as the Madarsa Act. In the case Anjum Kadari and Another versus Union of India and others, the Supreme Court has overturned a March 2024 judgment by the Allahabad High Court, which had struck down the Madarsa Act. The High Court had deemed it in violation of the principle of secularism, a key aspect of the Constitution's basic structure, as well as Articles 14, 21 and 21A. Furthermore, the Act was challenged for being ultra-vires to Section 22 of the University Grants Commission or UGC Act 1956, which limits the power to confer degrees to institutions recognized under the UGC Act. Now, let's break down the key highlights of the Supreme Court's judgment. First, on the matter of the High Court's order, the Supreme Court clarified that a statute can only be struck down if it violates fundamental rights outlined in Part 3 of the Constitution, not simply for breaching the basic structure of the Constitution. Moving on to the rationale behind the Madarsa Act. The Supreme Court explained that this legislation was introduced to regulate educational standards in madrasas recognized by the board. The Act aligns with the state's responsibility to ensure that students acquire the necessary competencies for active participation in the socio-economic landscape of the nation. Another important point addressed was the legislative competence. The Supreme Court affirmed that the Madarsa Act falls within the legislative competence of the state legislature as it pertains to entry 25 of the concurrent list, which includes education, technical education, medical education, and universities. However, while the Madarsa Act was upheld, the Supreme Court identified certain provisions as partially unconstitutional. Specifically, regulations regarding higher education degrees such as Fazil, postgraduate degree, and Kamil, undergraduate degree were deemed unconstitutional as they conflict with the UGC Act's exclusive authority over degree conferral. Finally, on the regulation of minority educational institutions, the court highlighted Articles 29 and 30, which protect the cultural and educational rights of minorities. Article 30 Clause 1 ensures that religious and linguistic minorities have the right to establish and administer their educational institutions. To safeguard these rights, the National Commission for Minority Educational Institutions or NCMEI was constituted through the NCMEI Act of 2004. The Commission serves as a quasi-judicial body with adjudicatory, advisory, and recommendatory roles, holding the authority of a civil court in fulfilling its functions. In the latest update, the Ministry of Finance has proposed the fourth phase of consolidation for regional rural banks or RRBs. According to reports, this proposed merger will reduce the number of RRBs from 43 to 28, making them more efficient and sustainable. This consolidation effort is also in line with the vision of One State, One RRB, a strategy aimed at simplifying the structure and ensuring that RRBs can better serve the rural economy. To give you some background, the consolidation of RRBs has been carried out in phases, following the recommendations of the Dr. Vyas Committee established in 2001. The first phase of consolidation began in 2004 and 2005, and by 2020 and 2021, the number of RRBs had reduced from 196 to 43 through 3 phases of amalgamation. This process has helped in minimizing overhead expenses, promoting the adoption of new technology, enhancing the capital base, and expanding the operational areas of these banks, all of which contribute to a more robust and efficient system. Now, let's take a quick look at the history of regional rural banks. These banks were established in 1975 based on the recommendations of the Narasimhan Working Group, following the promulgation of an ordinance that was later replaced by the Regional Rural Banks Act of 1976. The primary objective of RRBs is to support the rural economy by providing credit and other banking facilities, particularly to small and marginal farmers, agricultural laborers, and small entrepreneurs. The structure of RRBs is also unique, with the Government of India holding a 50% stake, the the state governments holding 15%, and sponsor banks holding 35%. These institutions are classified as scheduled commercial banks and are regulated by the Reserve Bank of India, with supervision provided by the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development or NABARD. Though RRBs were created to focus on rural areas, they are allowed to set up branches in urban locations as well. In addition to the consolidation efforts, the government has taken several other steps to boost the functioning of RRBs. For instance, during the fiscal years 2021, 2022 and 2022 and 2023, the government infused Rs 10,890 crores of capital into RRBs to strengthen their financial standing. Furthermore, the government has introduced a sustainable viability plan to facilitate credit expansion, diversify business activities, reduce non-performing assets, and improve corporate governance across RRBs. Alongside this, a supervisory action framework for prompt corrective action has been implemented to ensure financial stability and fortify the capital structure of these banks. This series of reforms and initiatives aim to strengthen the regional banking sector and improve access to finance for rural populations.
In our next news, we'll be looking at a significant report released by the UN Environment Programme World Conservation Monitoring Center in collaboration with the International Union for Conservation of Nature. They have unveiled the much-anticipated Protected Planet Report 2024. This report marks the first global assessment of protected and conserved areas in the context of Target 3 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, Target 3 aims to expand the global network of protected areas to cover 30% of the planet's surface. This expansion has to be equitable and must respect the rights of indigenous people and local communities. So what exactly are protected and conserved areas? A protected area is a geographically defined location that's regulated and managed to achieve specific conservation goals. Meanwhile, conserved areas fall outside traditional protected areas but are still managed with the goal of preserving biodiversity, ecosystem services, and local values. Now, moving on to the key findings, the report shows some progress. Global coverage of PCAs has reached 17.6% for terrestrial and inland waters and 8.4% for marine and coastal regions. Another positive development is that over 2/3 of key biodiversity areas are now partially or fully protected. But there's still room for improvement, as about 32% of these areas remain unprotected. And importantly, only 8.5% of land worldwide is both protected and connected, a crucial factor for the sustainability of biodiversity. However, data on management effectiveness is limited as only 4% of protected areas are currently governed by indigenous people and local communities. So where do we go from here? The report emphasizes the importance of recognizing and supporting indigenous and traditional territories, which cover an impressive 13.6% of the world's land and should be included in conservation efforts. Moreover, international financing is critical. Under the GBF, countries have pledged to increase biodiversity investment from various sources to reach at least $200 billion annually by 2030. Now, before we wrap up, let's touch on some initiatives that are actively promoting protected and conserved areas. Here in India, 5 types of protected areas fall under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Sanctuaries, national parks, conservation reserves, community reserves, and tiger reserves. India has also signed the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement to safeguard ocean life, underscoring the country's commitment to global biodiversity. Additionally, there's the Climate Adaptation and Protected Areas Initiative, which focuses on using nature-based solutions to bolster climate resilience and protect biodiversity, particularly within and surrounding protected areas.
In our next news update, let's take a look at the key outcomes from the 7th session of the International Solar Alliance's Annual Assembly held in New Delhi. The International Solar Alliance, or ISA, has re-elected India as its president for the 2024-2026 term, with France stepping in as vice president. One of the major highlights of the assembly was the release of the 3rd edition of the World Solar Report series, which includes 4 important reports shedding light on the latest developments in solar energy worldwide. Let's start with the World Solar Market Report 2024, which presents some striking statistics. Global solar capacity has seen a massive leap, rising from 1.22 gigawatts in 2000 to approximately 1,419 gigawatts in 2023. In terms of manufacturing, it is expected that global solar panel production will exceed 1,100 gigawatts by 2024, more than double the demand. The surge is also driving down the cost of solar panels. And when it comes to jobs, the solar industry is booming. There are now 16.2 million clean energy jobs worldwide, with 7.1 million of those in solar energy alone. That's an impressive 44% increase compared to 2022. Moving on to the World Investment Report 2024, we see a notable rise in global energy investments, as the energy investments are expected to climb from $2.4 trillion in 2018 to $3.1 trillion by 2024. Moreover, solar energy continues to lead the charge, accounting for a substantial 59% of all renewable energy investments globally. Next, let's look at the World Technology Report 2024. First, in terms of technological breakthroughs, multi-junction perovskite scales are emerging as a disruptive technology that could significantly advance solar energy production. Additionally, utility-scale solar photovoltaic costs have dropped by a staggering 90% since 2010, making solar power even more accessible and cost-effective. Another important focus of the assembly was the GH2 readiness assessment for African countries, which highlights GH2 potential to decarbonize industries heavily reliant on fossil fuels like steel and fertilizer production. For those who may not be familiar, the International Solar Alliance is a global, intergovernmental organization headquartered in India, which is dedicated to promoting solar energy adoption worldwide. The ISA was conceptualized on the sidelines of COP21 in Paris in 2015. Moreover, this alliance currently includes 103 member countries and 17 signatory countries, making it a truly global initiative. The ISA Assembly serves as the apex decision-making body, representing all its members and guiding the implementation of the ISA's framework agreement. In conclusion, the 7th ISA Assembly has reaffirmed its commitment to advancing solar power as a key solution for a sustainable, carbon-neutral future.
In a significant development, the Asian Development Bank has released its Asia-Pacific Climate Report, spotlighting India's transition away from fossil fuels towards clean energy. This shift marks an essential step in India's sustainable development journey. Let's first delve into the key initiative driving India's move from fossil fuels to clean energy. The cornerstone of this transformation is the fossil fuel subsidy reform, a remove, target and shift approach that has helped in reducing subsidies in the oil and gas sector by 85%, dropping from a high of $25 billion in 2013 to $3.5 billion by 2023. Through a gradual phasing out of petrol and diesel subsidies from 2010 to 2014, this reform has helped in creating fiscal space for government support to renewable energy initiatives, critical electricity infrastructure, etc. Next is the role of taxation. From 2010 to 17, a cess on coal production and imports was introduced. 30% of these collections went to a National Clean Energy and Environment Fund, backing initiatives by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, such as the Green Energy Corridor Scheme. Meanwhile, excise duties on petrol and diesel rose from 2014 to 2017, further boosting clean energy funds. Moving forward, various government schemes and programs like the National Green Hydrogen Mission and PM Kusum are also contributing to India's clean energy targets. Wrapping up, let us also talk about the Asian Development Bank. Founded in 1966, ADB supports projects in developing member countries that create economic and development impact, etc., which consist of its 69 member countries, including India, with its headquarters in Manila, Philippines. Notably, Japan and the United States are ADB's largest shareholders. These efforts mark a pivotal shift for India towards a cleaner, more sustainable future. The personality in news for today is Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das. He is in news as recently parliamentarians paid tribute to C.R. Das on his birth anniversary. Born in Calcutta, Chittaranjan Das studied at the Presidency College, Calcutta and studied law in London. Now, let us look at some of his key contributions. He successfully defended Aurobindo Ghosh in the Alipur bomb case in 1909 and participated in the non-cooperation movement in 1920. He also served as Congress President in Gaya session 1922. Moreover, he founded the Swaraj Party within the Congress with Motilal Nehru in 1923. Also, he was the first elected mayor of the Calcutta Municipal Corporation 1924, and lastly, he established the National University at Dhaka 1921. Adding on to this, let us also look at some of his literary works. In the newspaper, he published Forward, later named Liberty, for which Subhash Chandra Bose was the editor. In terms of his books, he wrote India for Indians and Freedom Through Disobedience. Through his actions, he showcased the values of leadership, courage, etc.
As we conclude today's main news, let's have a look at some quick updates. Third edition of high-level virtual interaction Mahasagar was conducted by the Indian Navy. Mahasagar, launched by Indian Navy in 2023, is a biannual initiative promoting cooperation and high-level interactions among Indian Ocean region countries. Recently, sea foam concept was widely seen in news. Sea foam in ocean is created by organic material, wind and waves forming bubbles on beach. It's made up of micelles, which are small spheres of surfactants surrounding air. Indonesia's Mount Lewatobi Laki-Laki volcano has erupted. Located on Flores Island in East Nusa Tenggara province, volcano is part of twin volcano system that local residents perceive as male and female mountains. Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has inaugurated Tulip Brand, a digital platform for craft and community empowerment. Its goal is to empower marginalized artisans by providing them with a platform for global exposure and sales of their products through e-marketing. Researchers have discovered a specific protein, interleukin 35, that protects against type 1 and autoimmune diabetes. Autoimmune diabetes has characteristics of both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, marks the 60th anniversary of the Red List. Established in 1964, it is the world's most comprehensive information source on the global conservation status of animal, fungi, and plant species. India and Kazakhstan signed an agreement to establish Indo-Kazakh Joint Venture Company, IREUK, Titanium Limited, for production of tea slag in India. Titanium is a hard, shiny, light and strong refractory metal and the 9th most abundant element on Earth. The world's first wooden satellite, LignoSat, developed by Japan, has been launched. The satellite will study how wood withstands space's extreme conditions. It's a small palm-sized satellite made from onoki wood, a type of magnolia tree native to Japan. Before we sign off, let's challenge your understanding in today's installment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this episode of News Today engaging. For the solutions to the quiz and to access the PDF version of News Today, remember to visit the provided links in the description.